Hello, my name is Marina Mayer, Editor-in-Chief of Food Logistics and Supply and Demand Chain Executive, and I am your moderator for today's webinar on how to achieve resiliency and efficiency in procurement with no code. During this webinar, hear from industry experts Scott Burdey, Business Process Improvement Consultant at Trinity Integrated Solutions, and Micah Hardy, Marketing Manager at QuickBase, to demonstrate how supply chain leaders are using no-code platforms to streamline complex multi-vendor operations, speed up information exchange across their supply chain, increase visibility into materials, quality, and inventory, and ensure processes are adaptable in case of disruption. Scott started Trinity 23 years ago with the purpose of helping clients improve productivity, quality, and service. His background in supply chain management and manufacturing enables him to help any client deliver excellence. Scott has brought that expertise to the QuickBase platform, which enables a one-two punch by defining the best business processes and then delivering them quickly on QuickBase. Micah specializes in educating supply chain professionals on how they can achieve agile operations with no code. In her current role, she works with a variety of publications and user groups to share how no code allows for real-time visibility and automation across complex processes and siloed systems. Micah joined QuickBase in the summer of 2019, and prior to that, she worked in marketing at SimScore, now Precisely. Should the audience have any questions throughout this webinar, please submit them via the console on your screen at any time so that we can address them at the end of this presentation. And with that, Scott, Micah, welcome. I'm going to pass things over to you.
Great, thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on achieving resiliency and efficiency in procurement with no code. As Marina introed, my name is Micah Hardy. I'm a demand manager at QuickBase, and I focus on educating those in the supply chain space on rapid innovation and how no code can be used to solve their challenges. On a personal side, I am a snowboard and paddleboarder and also a lifelong New Englander, which is why I have to have those multi-seasonal hobbies. But with that, I'll hand things over to Scott to quickly intro himself.
Hey, thanks, Micah. My name is Scott Burdey. They mentioned earlier, I started Trinity 23 years ago. And I love focusing on business process improvement with our clients. And while today's a lot in the supply chain area, it really focuses on, it transcends any type of business that you have. Would love the opportunity to meet you. Come on to Dallas. I'll treat you to some great barbecue here. And looking forward to meeting many of you one of these days.
Great. Thanks, Scott. And with that, just going to quickly go over an agenda for today's session. So we're going to kick things off talking about procurement in today's age of disruption and the type of challenges that procurement professionals are facing today. From there, we're going to move into how you can solve those challenges. So improving visibility and being able to react faster in the event of unanticipated change, and why procurement teams are specifically leaning on no-code platforms to do so, to solve these challenges. That's going to be relatively quick. From there, we're going to move into the majority of the webinar where Scott is going to walk us through some demonstrations of several different procurement use cases with no-code solutions. And then at the end, we will leave time for Q&A. So please, anyone, if you have any questions, submit them through the Q&A function on your screen, and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. But with that, let's kick things off. So on this slide, you see just a small handful of some examples of headlines in the supply chain space this year. So on the top left, calling out the global container shortage that has shown no signs of letting up. Below that, another big headline are semiconductor shortage and the chip shortage that's really heavily impacting the tech industry and electric vehicle supply chains, for example. And then upper right, more of a consumer perspective and environmental crises in Brazil that are causing a coffee shortage due to low water supply. And then a more recent example with the cracked Memphis bridge, really interrupting domestic logistics here in the US. And even this morning, I was reading Bloomberg Supply Lines, and they called out that JBS, which is one of the world's largest global meat producers, is still recovering from a cyber attack that made them have to shut down plant production in the majority of their plants for the better part of a handful of months. So just another example of a disruption, and in that case being security. So again, just a handful of examples. This is by no means the full list, especially over the last 14 months. But the message here is that in the world of supply chain, disruption is constant and continuous. And today's supply chains are focused on better preparing for these unanticipated events. However, in contrast to that, and part of the reason, why we're here today to talk about this is we have all these headlines saying we need to adapt, there's disruption happening, it's going to keep happening. But based on an annual survey we conducted with hundreds of supply chain professionals, actually only 1 in 3 leaders say that they're very prepared for future supply chain disruptions. And that brings us to today's topic, and specifically, building resilience in procurement. But before we move forward, we do have a poll for the group because, again, that's survey data, but we want to cater today's presentation for those of you joining us. So launching our poll, I want to ask the audience today, do you feel prepared to handle future disruptions to your supply chain? Yes, no, or kind of. So if I could invite everybody back to give us your input so we can help, personalize this experience for our audience today. I'll leave about 30 seconds. Make sure you hit submit and we'll review momentarily. All right, just about 10 more seconds here. And the poll's anonymous, so no worries. Results. Wow, okay, so vast majority of those of us joining today are in the kind of bucket. And we've got a few people in yes, which I think others might be envious of that. For those of you in the yes bucket, I would be curious kind of what types of disruption you're prepared for. We talked about environmental, maybe security, labor, regulations. These are all different sources that can impact your supply chain. So I'd be curious, which ones you're best prepared to combat against and which ones might still be an opportunity for growth for you. But as expected, and in line with that survey data, we've got a lot of people in the no or kind of bucket. So the good news is this matches what we're seeing in the market, and we're going to talk about solutions to help you feel better prepared today. All right, so moving forward, we're talking about disruption, but let's get back to today's topic. And what does this mean for procurement? What does this mean for those of you on our webinar today? So what it means for procurement is that right now, because of disruption, procuring the right goods at the right cost and the right time is getting exponentially more difficult. So whether you're trying to find the right vendors, you're trying to onboard, monitor, and rate vendors, especially if you've added, dual or multiple sources over the past 12 months. And then you're also trying to have control and visibility of spend. All of this is getting more difficult in an extremely time-sensitive and pressurized situation. And so again, leaning back on that survey, we found that 40% of supply chain professionals say that risk mitigation falls on sourcing and procurement. So the impact here is really being felt by those of you on the call today. But with that, let's move into knowing that we're carrying risk. Disruption is really heavily impacting procurement, specifically how procurement professionals are coping. And in talking about this, we wanted to visit McKinsey, another global survey that they conducted, where across industries, they found that disruption is triggering structural change, and particularly investment in technology and tools to enable more digital collaboration. And this is something that we find also holds true in procurement. So we see procurement professionals coping by turning to technology that is helping them quickly stand up new solutions and get better visibility into supplier data. So stand up a solution against their new sourcing model, or get better visibility into suppliers and materials so that they can identify alternative sources faster. At the start, maybe 14, 16 months ago, we probably saw many supply chains leveraging what they had to solve for these challenges. So existing systems, email, spreadsheets, et cetera, to cover these new processes or reporting needs. But as many of you are probably aware, and as we talked today, it's become very clear that disruption is constant and ongoing. And these, short-term solutions are really failing to scale. So we find supply chain professionals looking for scalable, sustainable solutions. But as you all are probably aware as well, the key caveat in the supply chain space is that you need those solutions now. You need them quickly. Things are changing daily, so there's no time to wait for grand scale technology implementation. And this is exactly why we're seeing no-code emerge in the supply chain space, is because no-code platforms are the intersection between fast, secure, and scalable solutions. So just to click into that for a moment, for anybody who is unfamiliar, as again, emerging technology in the space, what are no-code platforms? So no-code platforms for supply chain teams allow you to implement solutions, digital solutions, 3 to 4 times faster than traditional software or traditional development. And the reason for this is in the title. It's because they don't require you to hard code these solutions or systems. So taking that and applying it to procurement, we see procurement professionals leveraging no-code to automate workflows. So those new sourcing models, maybe you have a task force that you've spun up. I've heard about task force being spun up to handle the vessel shortage, for example, and you need a software system to manage that task force and their processes. And we also see procurement professionals using no-code to aggregate supplier data. So streamline and digitize communications with their suppliers, get faster access to cost analysis. Most importantly, quickly identify alternatives through real-time and comprehensive analytics. So these are all things that procurement professionals are using no-code to do, and in particular because they can get to these automated workflows and aggregated data really, really quickly. So just before we move into the demonstration portion of the webinar, I just wanted to kind of realize that with an example. So this actually comes from a conversation I had with the director of procurement at a global energy and automation services company last week. We had our user conference. Unfortunately, it's an anonymous example brand-wise, but I hope you all understand we're all concerned about security nowadays. But he still allows me to share his story. So, for example, as we talked about earlier, he was talking to me about how his company in particular has been hit really hard by the semiconductor shortage. And in trying to mitigate that, he found his teams were spending way too much time, one, finding those alternative suppliers, so just determining which alternative suppliers they had, and then 2, aggregating cost data for leadership. So leadership's asking them about ROI and wants analysis of these different vendors and sources that they're using. And they were spending a lot of time gathering and reporting out that data in, reports, Excel, PowerPoints, etc. So for him, he has his teams using no-code, and through that application, they've been able to unite their supplier information and feed it into dynamic dashboards. So today, his teams can quickly identify those alternative sources because all of those analytics are feeding into dashboards that his team has at their fingertips to say, okay, we can't use this vendor for this material, but look, we've got these 2 and this one costs the least, so let's go with them as our alternative source. These same dashboards are completely eliminating their need to report out to leadership because they can just present leadership with real-time data and no need to manually aggregate or recalculate anything for, a singular presentation or one weekly meeting. And really what this all comes down to is that this is allowing his people to spend more time on what matters right now, which is supplier relations and making sure that their supply chain has access to the materials that are going to keep it going. So this was a really cool story, really impactful, and Scott's going to talk a little bit more about specific companies and their use of no-code in their supply chains as we move forward. But before we transition, we do have one more poll for the group. Oops, let me jump back into that poll, push it over to the audience. Awesome. All right, so one more poll for the group. If that example resonated with you, curious how long it takes, those of you on the call today, your teams to identify an alternative supplier. So less than a day, takes your team 2 to 3 days to identify an alternative supplier, a week, multiple weeks. We're curious about this. So again, we can help speak to your experiences as we move through these demonstrations. So I'll pause for about 30 seconds here again, and we will revisit momentarily. All right, just a few more seconds here. Make sure to hit submit. And let's check out our results. All right, so the majority of us are at 2 days or more. So again, less than a day. Seems like we have some people with ideal operations on this call. So would definitely love to learn as a group how you're achieving that. But for the majority of you joining us, it seems like we've got 2 to 3 days, a week, multiple weeks. So when we're talking about, material shortages, time in getting to an alternative supplier is going to directly impact production and the continued functioning of your supply chain. So the great news is that I'm going to hand over to Scott in a moment, and we're going to talk a bit more about solutions and procurement and applications that could help you get to the data you need to identify those alternatives faster or to approve new sources faster, for example. So Scott will take over now, and we'll walk through some of these demonstrations. Handing over to you, Scott.
Hey, thanks, Micah. We've got some great demos. Let's jump right into those for sake of time. So we're going to do real life client demos here. We've got 4 that we've got queued up here, starting with Willow Run, then Dominion Siding, Modern Times, and then Southwest Airlines. Some of the names you might know, some you may not. But all of these have the same type of procurement challenges with regards to very broad multi-vendor operations, where they've got them either, across the United States or across the world. We have the same challenges that many of you have probably with visibility into what the materials are, when they're coming in, what have I ordered, have I committed any of those inbound orders for, the inbound purchase orders for outbound orders already. And just really having that information visibility within your supply chain to be able to see everything, plus a whole bunch more you're going to see within these demonstrations. So let's start with the first one, Willow Run Greenhouse, a really great operation that they do a lot of tropical plants and all of the accessories that come with those plant spots, all the soil and everything like that. They service a lot of garden centers, florists, and interior scapers. New word if you've never heard that. But we really went out and helped them solve for, and you're going to see that solve here, just really being able to, for their buyers to be able to accurately procure them, the materials, understand where they are in the supply chain, getting them in, commit those purchase orders automatically. You're going to see this, and then making sure that their inventory is accurate, which I know everybody is always challenged with, right? And in my years of supply chain, and help them achieve a new level of accuracy, accountability, visibility that they've never had before. So let's have Brad take you through that now.
Buying is really important to Willow Run because they're sourcing live plants from vendors and growers across the U.S. and Canada, and their customers, who are garden centers, grocery stores, florists, interior designers, they rely upon really precise delivery dates, and that could be as soon as the next day, or it could be for specific events out into the future, like their customers wanting Easter lilies in time for Easter or poinsettias in time for Christmas. And to give you an idea of the scale of their operations and the scope of the challenge, they sell about 3,500 different SKUs, different types of plants and hard goods. It's a very seasonal business, so they're only selling a portion of those each time of the year, maybe about half of that 3,500. And they're sourcing those plants and products from about 140 different vendors. And each and every week, they're placing about 40 or 50 purchase orders with their vendors and bringing in 30 to 40,000 individual plants. So, the challenge was to create a buying process that's not only streamlined as possible, but also gives them the information that they need to make really accurate purchasing decisions so that they're not overbuying products, and also so they're not overselling products. So I thought, to begin the demonstration today, I set up a couple of sales orders just so we could get an idea of what products have already been placed. And I set up that with a demo account that I'm just going to open up real quick. And just to give you an idea of what their sales orders look like, their buyers or their customers rather are placing orders, for a delivery. And this order that we have set up here includes certain flowering materials like African violets, bromeliads, and pothos. And it also includes some hard goods, some things like plastic liners or pieces of ceramic or things like that. So all of those types of components are on the sales order. And when their buying team goes to make their purchasing decisions, they need to know, what has been on order. What do I need to bring in to fulfill those sales orders? And typically, they're doing their buying maybe 2 or 3 weeks out. So what we've designed for Willow Run here is something that we call the buying module. And I'm going to launch it here for a week out towards the end of the month. That sales order that I just showed you had a delivery date for this week towards the end of June, just so you can get an idea of what it looks like to kind of start a week when they're setting up their purchasing for the week. And it's a 4-step process, and really the crux of it is here on step 1, where they're making purchasing decisions for what to buy from their vendors based on what their actual needs are. So we show them all of the items that are either stock items or are items that have actually been sold to a customer will be in this list when they open up their buying module. And it's grouped by certain categories of products, and you can see, the description as well as the quantity that are needed to fulfill sales orders, what quantity is already on hand, what quantity is scheduled to arrive because we've already have open purchase orders that are on order and yet to arrive, as well as certain desired stock levels. What the buyer is doing in this module is going through one by one and placing the number that they want to purchase from their vendor in order to fulfill those sales orders. So they just scroll through the list and they say, hey, this is what I need. Maybe this is what's coming in and what my desired stock level is. And then they're making decisions about what they need to purchase. And there's a color coding system that kind of highlights when they've purchased enough to fulfill orders for the week. If it's yellow, then they haven't purchased enough, and they may need to bring in some more in order to fill those orders. They also have the ability to choose their vendor if it's a product that can be sourced from multiple vendors. These particular liners that I was just placing orders for only comes from one of their vendors, AMR Nursery. But these African violets could be ordered from Holtkamp or Great Lakes. And the default choice is essentially their preference. So that's largely driven by cost. They're probably going to want to order products from the vendor that has the least amount of cost. But what's also really nice is that the system understands the pack size that needs to be sold from that vendor. So this vendor, you can only purchase Ethereums in quantities of 30. So if I try to place an order for a number that's outside of their pack size, the system is automatically going to change that for me to make sure that I'm kind of abiding by the vendor's rules here. I can also include certain special requests that were placed by the sales reps in the sales order, and these special requests are going to go all the way through the purchase orders at the end of the process. So I'm going to finish putting together my orders here for these products. Maybe I want to order from a different vendor, so instead of Plants and Design, I'll order these bromeliads from Delion. If there was let's say this these bromeliads, I need a heck of a lot of them, and Living Color isn't able to fulfill all of them. I could even split an item and order them from multiple vendors. So I need 710 of these bromeliads, and let's say I'm going to order 600 of them from Living Color, and I'll order another 120 from Delion. So I can actually split that particular product and order them from more than one vendor, which is a really cool feature of the system. So they're going to basically do this for each and every item that they need to place. And then the next step is to place these items on trucks, particularly for plants that they source down in Florida. They have a number of different carriers that they deal with in order to bring in the products into their greenhouse. And they like to kind of really be able to specify exactly when those orders are going to arrive and when they're going to be picked up and what carrier they're going to come on. And that just helps with the granularity of the process so that they know what's coming in on what truck and when. You can see that we started by going through item by item, but by the time we've gotten to step 3, the system is already building our purchase orders. So from AMR Nursery, I'm ordering 4 different items on this particular purchase order. I'm ordering 2 bromeliads from Delion. I've got begonias that I'm bringing in from Great Lakes, African violets from Holtkamp, more bromeliads from Living Color, etc. And this is an opportunity for me to review my orders. I can change things up. Let's say I haven't met a vendor's minimum order threshold, and maybe I decide, hey, let's add some more African violets to this order from Holtkamp. Or let's decide that, hey, these bromeliads I actually want to order from Delion instead of Living Color, and it's going to move that item from the Living Color purchase order up to the Delion purchase order. So I have an opportunity to kind of review things and make tweaks as I go. And then at the end of the process, the system's going to automatically generate the purchase order. So here's all my purchase orders across these vendors ready to go for the week. And if I hop out of the buying module, we can see that those purchase orders have been created in the system. So I'm back here on my buying dashboard where I went into the buying module, and now I can see that I have a series of pending purchase orders for the week of June 21st. So here's all those purchase orders that I just built. So here's the AMR purchase order coming in from AMR on the Peninsula truck, and it's arriving on June 21st. And here's all of those items that I ordered. And the purchase order can be printed or emailed directly to the vendor so they get it. The process is pretty darn seamless. There's a number of other tools in that buying dashboard that helps them monitor, again, those shipments, also does all the receiving for when those trucks do come in and they receive the product and make sure that they receive what they ordered. And at that point, once they receive, that product is added to inventory. And, this is provided a number of benefits to Willow Run. For one, what's great about the way that their purchase orders are set up in the system is that once a purchase order is actually placed, sales orders that are created, those items can be sold off of the purchase orders that are coming in. So if that's an inventory management kind of feature that we have in the system that allows products to be sold that have not arrived in the greenhouse yet, but because we know what's scheduled to arrive, it will prevent items from being oversold. And that just helps with the entire accuracy of the system. So, at the end of the day, not only is this process streamlined, but it's all about accuracy as well, and gives Willow Run the control and the confidence really over their inventory and supply chains so that they can run a really tight ship.
Thanks, Brad. Hey, I just want to emphasize one word at the end there, confidence. It has given Willow Run such a high new level of confidence in managing their entire process from procurement all the way through receiving, all the way through shipping that. All the inventory that they've got just really has changed the business for them. So let's move on to our next demo. Dominion Siding, siding and roofing company out of Nashville, Tennessee. Maybe some of you have used them, but you're going to see a little bit different here. A whole vendor pricing management. They have a lot of different pricing needs to figure out the best pricing, both for themselves and for their customers. You're going to see all different types of material pricing here, both cyclical and spot pricing, especially what's going on in the marketplace today around building. That's so important. You're going to see how we got the vendors integrated right into the solution here too, with their proposals, digital signatures, and then of course, as needed in most type procurement systems, purchasing and order invoice management. So let's have Rick take you through that now.
Dominion Siding is a siding and roofing company out of Nashville, Tennessee, primarily in the construction industry. Part of their challenge was really managing their vendor pricing, and the changing environment of construction materials has really raised the need to create ability to track pricing on an ongoing and regular basis, as well as projects. Dominion has around 100 different vendors that they manage, as well as customers in excess of 200 to 300. Their customers, of course, are some of the major builders in the country that they do siding and roofing for in major metropolitan areas. Part of Dominion's challenge was managing the vendor pricing, especially in the changing construction materials pricing market. To manage the pricing of over 100 vendors, they needed a cyclical price request system, as well as a spot pricing for special jobs, especially with the way construction materials fluctuate in pricing, more of a commodity-based pricing, the indexes. It's very important for them to get good prices from their suppliers on an ongoing and regular basis, as well as spot pricing. As part of the application, I'm going to go in and kind of demonstrate. We're going to go through and look at both the cyclical price request as well as the project-specific price request. With Dominion, they wanted the ability to go into and create new pricing requests. And again, this is a cyclical pricing request. More around, in the past years ago, it was probably more of an annual basis, and now it's becoming more of a regular, ongoing, every quarter, twice a year, things of that nature. So within QuickBase, we've enabled and built a custom interface for Dominion to go in and build a cyclical pricing request. They have the ability to go in, select the categories of the items, different trims, and select multiple categories. When they get done, they proceed to the next step. They can then look at all the items within those categories they selected, and they can even filter down to just a small selection of those items within those categories. When they're done selecting those items or selecting all the items, they would come down and hit Save Items and Select Vendors. At this point, it brings up all of their vendors that they purchased supplies from. And what they can do is they can then click and add multiple suppliers to this specific cyclical price request. They can come up here and they can search and then add multiple vendors. And so over here, here's the vendors that are selected. Once the vendors are selected, they would then come down and save and send emails. And it will send emails based upon the emails for those vendors who are contractual pricing type emails from that supplier. Once this is done, they save and send the emails. Of course, it says date sent to vendor, but the vendors will get an email. And those vendors, the emails they'll get, will have a link to say view and submit the pricing request. So when the vendor opens up this email, they will see, this is my vendor, this is who I am, Trinity Test Vendor. And it says, here's the 3 items that Dominion has requested pricing from. The supplier can enter their pricing, and whatever the case is, they can say an effective date is starting June 1st. They can go down and select all these other items as well and move on from there. So at this point, they are submitting their pricing for those 3 items within that bid price request. And once they're done, they can download the pricing as a PDF, so they have a record of what they submitted. And they can overall then save and submit. Once it comes back into the QuickBase application from this custom interface that the suppliers see, they have the ability to then go out and look at the pricing request. They can look at the open pricing request and then go in and review the different pricing requests that have been submitted. So at this point, they are coming in and saying, now they're going to review the pricing from price request 46, and they'll see by item all the vendors that submitted pricing. They can click on an item and explode it and shrink it as well. When there's multiple prices from different vendors, you'll see for this item, they can approve specific vendors for pricing. They can actually override the price that was submitted and an effective date for that price. So they have the ability to kind of see and filter within here and just choose a specific vendor or go forward. So they have the ability to submit, build a price request, send it to multiple vendors at a time. When the vendors respond, they get notified, as well as they come in and review and approve the prices. So that's kind of the cyclical process of a price request. As we get into spot pricing or a project-specific request, very similar. They can come in, they can create a proposal bid request. At this point, you'll see is that they go through, they then come in, they can save and select the items, they select the vendors the same way, and add items to that bid request. At that point, a similar email gets sent to the vendor, and as well, they then can submit pricing, and it comes back in, tied specifically to the project that it was taken from. The other piece around managing their pricing and things is really contracting and in sending proposals and signatures. They wanted the ability to be able to send proposals, but what they really wanted to do was to look at the proposal before it's being sent. So when they come in for a given proposal, this is after they've got pricing, this proposal then brings up the actual PDF of the image and lets them build the email going out to their customer with this proposal tied to it. They can add text down the body, they can attach more items, more documents to that proposal, but they see it all here. They can zoom in and out and go forward and hit send email. That will then send the image that they just exactly saw, as well as then add other people to that email. And then when they get that, they get an email similar to the other price requests that they can go in and review that proposal and electronically sign it, and then go forward from there. So all of those items, when they click send here, they will then go in and the supplier will get an email with the link to sign and date that proposal. So at this point, they have the ability to send, like I said, proposals. They have this ability to send purchase orders and invoices as well through this same type of interface where they can actually bring it up, see the purchase order and see the invoice before they hit the send button. They can add other people to it, and also as needed, actually have the signature piece being captured through an interface built through their QuickBase application. So this is how Dominion Siding has really attacked the challenges within managing vendor pricing, making it easy for them to build price requests or spot pricing requests, sending it to the vendors having a portal interface that they can submit the pricing to, and then go forward. And all of that then is documented within there. They submit and accept bids from suppliers, and then it goes forward into their proposals and contracts with their customers. That is the Dominion Siding application focused on the efficiency of procurement and managing their vendor pricing.
Fantastic. I think the one word on this one, integration. With all the Dominion suppliers, especially around pricing, you can see it there in spades, and how they work that with their vendors just seamlessly to be able to understand exactly what they're priced at for the different work that takes place. So let's move on for there. The next one's Modern Times, very large consulting organization and project management team. A lot of private sector and government jobs that they handle. They specialize in labor compliance, which is really important for these large-scale jobs, especially when it's around government jobs. And they also have a very large community relations team that they work with just the local organizations through diversity and training to make sure that they've really got that handled across the entire community, local community. You're going to see a lot of contractors and subcontractors within this application on how they have to be managed through the entire purchase order and invoice workflow management process, and also some job compliance oversight. A really great app. Let's dive right into it with Laura.
In this application, we are tracking contracts, change orders, pay applications, and invoices for those contracts. We do this with a table called Subcontracts, and at the moment we're showing here the primary home dashboard page. This has various different features, including a search widget, links to other dashboards, reports that display data in the system that the user needs to see, and summary reports which group data together by specific values, giving us a high-level view of the status of different records. On the left you can see we have subcontracts by status, we have change orders by status, and invoices by status. At the bottom, we have a list of change orders for action. With our other dashboard links, we can launch subject matter specific pages which combine groups of reports together. We'll take a look at those in just a moment. Here's a view of the list of subcontracts for our specific project. And we can then use the icons to access those records. I'm going to open up this one because it's already been approved. When we go into a record within a table, we are presented with groups of information, which in this case are separated with section headings and tabs. This allows us to navigate through various different data sets about this specific subcontract without having to scroll up and down a very long form. We store data about the project and the vendor, their role within the project, their contract type, and how much money the subcontract is worth. Below that, we create approvers who will be responsible for approving the subcontracts. We set the approvers in a templatized fashion so that according to the needs of the project, or specifically the types of subcontracts, we can have as many approvers as we need or as few as one. You'll notice at the bottom here we do have a little section for the change orders. When we add line items, which is the detail of the subcontract, we do that within a set of records where we store the information that can be used to generate subcontract documentation. Navigating from our subcontract detail over to our invoices, you can see here that we have a number of different invoices, and we have some row colorization that indicates when some invoices are past due. The red ones, as you can see on the key here, have a payment date being empty and the payment due date is past due. From our dashboard pages, as you can see, we have invoices by status, we have subcontracts by status, and we have our other dashboards. Let's take a quick look at our Subcontracts Dashboard. We have My Subcontracts for Action Summary. We have a chart that indicates the total value of the subcontracts by status. And we have the subcontracts that are ready to submit for population. These are subcontracts that have been entered but have not yet got line items. The user would open the subcontract and make sure to submit for population. This would then move the subcontract over to an engineer to populate the line items. Going back to the subcontract dashboard, we then have a list of subcontracts for approval. Here you can see a column with colored buttons. These colored buttons indicate which level and who is responsible for approving that particular subcontract at that particular time. The user can either click these buttons or first go into the subcontract to review the details before approving. So we can go into the subcontract detail, review the line items, make sure everything is in order before approving that subcontract. Now you'll see as we scroll down that that subcontract has now moved on to level 2. And at the very bottom, we have subcontracts for issue. Those have been fully approved, and the administrative team are now expected to process those subcontracts and send over the documents that have been generated out of QuickBase. One key element that is being tracked in the application are the invoices for the subcontracts. We can add an invoice, fill in the information, including an invoice number, enter in a date and an invoice amount, specify the type, indicate the owner, select a discipline which generates a list of template approvers that we can choose from, and then we simply create our invoice, and QuickBase behind the scenes will create our approvals, which if we refresh the window, we will then be able to see. So in this particular case, our invoice is structured for 2 approvals, and once we have entered the information, we can submit for approval. This now, as you can see, puts it in the ballpark for me to approve. I can then approve it, and if we go back to that particular record, we can now see that it is waiting for level 2 approval, and the approval information is stored in this table here. Invoices can then be disputed, they can be rejected and require correction, or they can simply be approved. Going back to the invoice dashboard, we can see lists of invoices that need attention, and here's the one we just created. Once invoices are approved, they move into this report underneath, and then we can also see approvals over the last 30 days. On our charts dashboard, we have high-level information that tells users how many open invoices there are and separates them out by equipment and everything else. We can see the volume of open invoices and the open invoices for May, April, and months prior to that. This is a rolling calculation, so in June it would show the June amount and then the May open invoice amount. We're then able to display invoices awaiting approval and population or disputed, and see the count of invoices, and each of these blocks is drillable into the records. We have the invoices by type, we have the value of the invoices by type, and then at the bottom here we have counts of invoices under and over 10,000. And when they are over 10,000, they're grouped into 10,000 increments and counted.
Scott, looks like you're still on mute.
Thank you. As you can see, this is an all-encompassing app to manage a wide range of procurement and vendor management needs for modern times, and has really, again, radically changed their business. Well, we had one more for you today, but we're running out of time. I'll tell you what, we're going to give you our contact information at the end of this. Give us a call. and we can show you the Southwest Airlines procurement app. It does an amazing thing for them across all of their passenger services that take place, across all of their airports, over 105 of them. If you've never traveled them, traveled with Southwest, you need to. But it really helps track suppliers down to the actual hours they're using at every single airport for every single job they do on a daily basis, and all the workflow and approval processes for that. Really cool app. Sorry we're running short on time, but we've gotten a handful of questions in, and we really want to get to those. But you'll see our contact information at the end. Get a hold of us, and we'll be glad to share that Southwest information with you.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Oh, sorry. Marina, was there an issue?
No, I didn't know if you wanted to jump to questions, but you can continue.
Oh, we just have a couple more slides, sorry. But just before we jump into Q&A, as Scott said, you guys have you women and ladies have some, oh my God, you men and ladies have some links on your sidebar for more information. So you can visit us at quickbase.com/supply chain to learn how to disruption proof your supply chain. And then you also have a link to Trinity's website, Scott.
Yeah, you can get a hold of us on the website at trinityis.com. We'd love to have that conversation with you, really understand your needs, and deliver to those just like you've seen in many of the demos today.
Awesome. And then with that, thank you, Marina. We'll move into questions.
Perfect. Just a reminder to the audience, keep those questions coming in. So we have about 8 minutes. We can get through a couple of these. So let's kick off with this first one here. I have a lot of the data I need in other systems like SAP. Can these applications connect to other systems?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, many of the solutions we build connect to ERP solutions, whether it's SAP, Oracle, JDE, Infor, any of them. We're moving data out there, moving it into these very flexible type solutions. QuickBase here in this example, what we've shown you today, to be able to do those edge use cases and things right at the point of impact that really can't be done well in those ERPs. And then when it's time, we pass that data back and update those ERP solutions with the information. So not a problem. Do that all the time for clients.
And do you have any examples, not necessarily available today, but of applications for like vaccine or perishable food supply chains where time is absolutely critical?
Yes. When you get into things like vaccines or anything like that, first of all, you're having lot control. That's really important to be able to track that down to that, and date control, depending on how you're using dates and lots, and be able to manage that through the supply chain and have complete visibility to that. Not a problem on doing that, and providing not only the tools that we've shown you today, we haven't even shown you some of the mobile applications tied to these, the real-time mobile applications where you can barcode scan that and understand what is happening right at the point of impact with that, with whatever you're tracking in your supply chain, vaccines and otherwise.
And to jump in here, we got this question through the Q&A, and I actually we've got a press release on our site that talks about QuickBase's work with vaccine distribution. But just to give a quick example, we actually worked with Tarrant County Public Health, which represents the 15th largest county in the US this year, to help them stand up a vaccine registration portal and manage vaccine distribution to their community. So they were able to stand up that portal in a matter of days and process more than 500,000 requests for vaccination over the first 2 months. So we have actively been working with counties and local governments on vaccine distribution throughout this year, and would love to talk to anybody who's interested in more information there.
Wonderful. Some other questions that have been coming through. Can my suppliers gain access visibility into the information as well? And how do you control what info they can see?
So it's very common for clients to give access to external suppliers, customers, contractors into these applications. and allows you not only the ability to easily communicate with them through these and eliminate emails and all that, phone calls and texts and everything like that, but have them right in the app working alongside of you. So that's the answer to the first half of that question. And the second half is absolutely, we have a full what's called roles and permissions matrix in here. We can say, okay, this role, this contractor, customers, or vendors, or suppliers, whatever you want to call them, can only see this information and can only do this process within the application. So it's very flexible. The QuickBase platform allows us to be very flexible with how we give access to the information and what they can see.
Perfect. I think we have time for one more question. Can you send alerts notifications when an invoice is received or when the stock is low?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the core competencies of the QuickBase platform and being able to build on it from a no-code standpoint is a whole notifications tool within the platform. Whether it's reminders or trigger points or anything else, or a daily report that comes out to all your executives or your procurement team that says this, or even a weekly report. The ability to send notifications is really core within the application to alert people or to give them information that they need on a regular basis. So built right in there, stock gets low, not a problem. Stock gets below critical, another notification potentially. But very flexible around the ability to do that, and for you to set that up yourself, to be able to set up those notifications.
Wonderful. This was tons of great information. So thank you, Micah and Scott, for your time and your expertise. Thank you to our wonderful audience for all of your participation in the polls. Just a reminder, an archived version of today's webinar will be posted on Supply and Demand Chain Executive's website at sdcexec.com. Again, my name is Marina Mayer, Editor-in-Chief of Food Logistics and Supply and Demand Chain Executive, and I look forward to you tuning in to future webinars. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.